We're off to a good start. Well, good afternoon. We will go ahead and call today's meeting of the Local Government Committee to order. I've asked the sergeants to please call the absent members. Just a few housekeeping items to go over before we start. We allow 2 main witnesses per side with up to 3 minutes each person. Anyone beyond those limits must state their name, organization, and position for the record only. We have 9 items on the agenda for today's hearing. 1 item is proposed for consent, item number 2, SB 184, and we'll entertain a motion on the consent calendar once we've established a quorum. Item number 6, SB 485, Hernandez, and item number 9, SB 710, Galgiani, have been pulled off calendar per the author's request. Please note that item number 11, SB 789, Wykowski, is for testimony only, pursuant to the author's request. Our committee hears bills in author sign-in order, and we will go ahead and start as a subcommittee, and we'll start with item number 5, SB 477. Senator Leyva, welcome.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Members, SB 477 would simply reinstate mobile home owners as eligible participants in California's property tax postponement program. Perfect timing. Last session, Assemblymember Gordon authored 2231, and this reestablished the property tax postponement program, which provided property tax assistance to qualifying low-income households. At that time, AB 2231 omitted mobile homes from eligibility, which left mobile home owners, many of whom are lower-income seniors and or disabled, vulnerable to a tax sale of their home. With minimum impact to the general fund, but with maximum relief to many of the residents who live in nearly 5,000 mobile home parks in California, SD 20 having the most mobile home parks in the state. SB 477 would ensure that low-income disabled persons and seniors who live in mobile home parks are not at risk of losing their property simply due to taxes. The state property tax postponement program helps ensure that these lower-income residents and households who qualify for the program do not lose their homes. I am proud to report that SB 477 has received no votes, and here with me is Brian Augusta, who will testify in support, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Witnesses in support.
Mr. Chair and members, Rodney Wilson with the California Credit Union League. We are proud to support this bill. You know, credit unions offer loans to mobile homes as they do traditional homes, and we support this bill and its efforts to reinstate mobile homes and their eligibility for the property tax deferment program for seniors of low income. Thank you.
Thank you.
Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Witnesses in further witnesses in support. Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry.
So sorry. Carrie Mazzoni for the Educational Community of Homeowners in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Hi, Catherine Borg with the Western Manufactured Housing Communities, and unfortunately we are in a oppose unless amended position on this particular bill. The reason is that manufactured homes that are in manufactured housing communities are considered personal property. And if at whatever time that those homes become vacant and not being used any longer, and in this case the property tax postponement will layer on taxes that are owed by that person previous to them. Our concern is that in instances where that home is not sold for a profit and that those taxes cannot be repaid to the state, that the tax liability will end up with the property owner if nobody wants to purchase that home. So we are hoping that amendments would have been taken to make sure that the Controller's Office takes a more active process in the lien, maybe under the Civil Code 798.56A. They would be considered a junior lien holder, we believe. In that case, if they want to sell that home in place and keep a position on that home, they would be required to pay all the back rents and assessments to keep that home in place to resell it. What we're concerned about is how long that home would remain in our occupation without rent being paid by somebody. So with that, I'm sorry, we respectfully oppose.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, before we turn it over to committee questions or comment, I notice the presence of a quorum, and I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mainshine.
Here.
Mainshine here. Gonzalez. Gonzalez here. Alejo. Chu. Cooley. Here. Cooley here. Gordon. Here. Gordon here. Holden. Linder. Waldron. Here. Waldron here.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Gordon.
Yeah, just to the author, I will not be voting on this today, and I wanted to explain that to you since I actually support very much the property tax postponement program. I carried the bill last year to reinstate it.
Completely understand.
And when we were working last year on the reinstatement, there were some agreements that I made with the folks in the governor's office, and part of that had to do with what you're attempting to do. So I appreciate what your effort is here, but I just want to explain that I will be laying off for today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you don't want to get crossways with the governor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions or comments from the committee? Do we have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Waldron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of jump on what was said, it's kind of a conundrum because I do support the issue, but I also understand the opposition. So I'm wondering how those two can be reconciled.
So if I may, we are still working with the Controller's Office, and we hope that we will get to a point where if we don't have complete agreement, maybe there is just no opposition to the bill. But we are working on some of the amendments. So we may or may not get there. I don't know.
Okay. Do you have further questions or comments? No? Okay. Do we have a motion? We have a motion from Ms. Gonzalez, second from Mr. Cooley. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Can I?
Oh, I apologize.
That's
yes,
okay.
You may close.
I just quickly wanted to say again that we are working with the Controller's Office, and folks who live in mobile homes, by and large, welcome. Folks, by and large, that live in mobile homes live there because they can't afford to live in a single-family home. So we just want to make sure that they are afforded the same rights as people who live in a single-family home. And this is just something that will help them to not lose their home that many of them can barely afford as it is. So I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. And Mr. Augusto, your support has been noted for the record.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
The motion is do pass, and we refer to the Committee on Revenue and Taxation. Mainshine.
Aye.
Mainshine, aye. Gonzalez. Aye. Gonzalez, aye. Alejo. Aye. Alejo, aye. Chu. Aye. Chu, aye. Cooley. Aye. Cooley, aye. Gordon.
Not voting.
Gordon, not voting. Holden. Linder. Waldron.
Not voting.
Waldron, not voting.
Your measure is out 6-0. Congratulations.
Great. Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next is Mr. Wykowski, Senator Wykowski. Welcome.
Thank you.
And for the record, as was stated at the beginning of the meeting, item number 11, SB 789, Wykowski, is for testimony only today. So, Senator Wykowski, welcome. and you may proceed.
Excellent. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members, and staff, thank you for allowing this conversation today on this important bill, and an important conversation that each and every one of us need to be having. We understand that California is facing a historic drought. I believe this is the new norm. I believe that we're an arid area, and we're going to continue to have challenges in San Diego, the Peninsula, Sacramento, and Watsonville with our supply of water. And despite this emergency that we have, that the governor has discussed, and that each and every one of us are going to be on the tip of our tongue during our 4th of July visits at the parade, there are some in our community who continue to abuse our limited supply, even despite the drought. Now, we know that local government needs water pricing reform. We're well aware of the San Juan Capistrano decision that doesn't allow them to increase their rates to adequately address the waste and abuse of our water resources and respond to the historic drought. Now, the State Water Resource Control Board has made data available from hundreds of public water agencies, and it's telling that despite this severe water shortage, we've got a drought. The water agencies are telling us that despite their best efforts by the public water managers, water use has actually increased in some communities since 2013. It's reflected in the report. This measure, 789, will provide a new tool for local community water entities to rein in on these excessive users, and authorizes a tax of up to 300%, reflecting the three tiers that we have. It also will create a new source of revenue for water conservation and water energy use that will be invested back into the community and hopefully reduce everybody's water bills with these efficiencies. Now, I understand that members have many questions, and as highlighted in the staff report, too many questions and not enough answers. Let's get to the core of it. I understand first that there's a question of what is excessive use. We realize, at least the guidelines are that the average individual consumer should be using about 100 gallons. I would consider an amendment to define excessive use as 250 gallons per capita per day, recognizing the problems that we have in enforcement. So I'd like to add some clarity to the bill. That's where I would start. Now, obviously, the local agencies could, that's guidance. They could trump it and come up with their own understanding. I also recognize that local agencies do not want to share the tax with the state of California. I have a measure that's in your House about climate adaptation, as does Mr. Gordon and ours, and I'm worried about discussions regionally, but I understand that doesn't make sense. So while I think it's an error in having that we would like to amend the bill to take that out. So if the local agencies are taxing their people, then they're the ones that keep the money, and that's the original purpose of the bill, is to facilitate conservation. Finally, I recognize that cities and counties already have the authority to raise the tax. It's raised there. So we would take an amendment that would, rather than have that redundancy, that we would just simply say special districts and water districts that don't have the authority, that this legislation will correct that. And I will remove that, amend the bill to remove that entirely because it doesn't recognize the implicit authority that they have. It's an important bill. It's urgently needed to address the drought administration. It's a cliche we use now, but it's another tool in the toolbox. And also, it heightens the discussion with folks in the district. Because you say, who's going to vote for this? And I would submit to you, when we were one of the questions, the aggregate purchasers. When you wholesale water and San Diego Municipal buys the water, when you have a portion of your population, so you buy a certain amount, you're stuck with that price, whatever you pay for the price. So if you get some people in your district that are trying to do the best they can, be good citizens, or in San Diego and reduce their water use, the excessive users are the people that aren't using it. So you're getting that blend of folks, and this is a tool for those local folks to go after them. I appreciate your consideration. I'm making myself available to work with each and every one of you on this matter, and we'll take any questions and consider anything beyond the amendments that I'm suggesting that I'm willing to take to make this more palatable to each and every one of you.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Wieckowski. Do we have any witnesses? We're going to take public comment now. Any witnesses in support?
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Kyle Jones with Sierra Club, California, and we support in concept. We think the proposed, the suggested amendments that would create a 250 residential gallon per capita per day would really put us in a position of support. We think it's a great tool to really get to the most egregious users of water.
I got some history.
Kelly Did on behalf of California League Conservation Voters, and we also support in concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Margot Parks on behalf of the Family Winemakers of California, and also here for our friends with the Farm Bureau who couldn't be here in committee today. I want to thank the author for recognizing, I think, some of the ambiguities in the bill. One thing that we are sincerely concerned about as agricultural users of water is that I don't know that the bill really speaks to which users the excessive use portion goes to. So for agriculture, 200 gallons per day per capita is not really going to fly for us. So, I think that there's a lot of work to be done in terms of clarifying who this bill is going after. So we would, like to work with the author on that should this go forward. But at this point, think that this is a little uncooked and would ask your no vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members. Valerie Nera for the California Chamber of Commerce. The bill in its original form really just about gave me a coronary. Now I'm down to maybe really bad heartburn. So I guess that's progress. But the amendments that you're discussing are unclear to me. Do you mean just residential? Do you include business community in those numbers? Because
well, this is a time for you to comment. Okay. He can address that later. But
okay.
If you just
so it is. We have many businesses that are home-based businesses that would come under this. There's no way for them really to fit under that cap, depending on the kind of home-based business that they're running, crafts, those kinds of specialty-type businesses. And we think that there is already in law, with this drought emergency bill, the ability for locals to assess a fine for use above what the water districts say is their use for their district. And it varies from district to district how much and when. So we still have a lot of problems with this bill, and we'd like to work some more with the author. Maybe we can get to closure. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, good morning or good afternoon. David Wolf with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're opposed to the bill, and I would just follow up on Ms. Nera's comments with some of the same. What is the definition of excessive water use? Even as we note in our letter, let's say you have a family of 7, that does laundry and takes showers every day. Is that an excessive use of water? And yet they could be put in a higher tier that bumps them into that. There's concerns about that definition, I would say. And also, too, what about mistaken uses of water? Let's say you have a broken pipe in your house, for instance, and it takes you a while to fix it, and it's leaking, but you're trying to take care of it. But that may also make you an excessive user of water for that particular month, and that just doesn't seem fair. And a 300% tax, again, when there are existing penalties available for use, just seems rather excessive. So ask for a no vote.
Thank you. And now, just name and organization and position only, please.
Let him go. Okay, Mike Rogie with California Manufacturers and Technology Association in opposition.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Javier Gonzalez here on behalf of the California Restaurant Association in opposition of the bill.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Waldron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know you're still working on this, so I appreciate the opportunity to be able to throw out some comments. My district, San Diego, water is our biggest issue. Agriculture is the majority of my district. We always hear about, what can we do to get on the people who are using more water? Well, we're really not using hardly any water at all down where I am. All the lawns are brown, and, the farmers have really ratcheted down. So I just, my role up here, I feel, is instead of being more punitive on people, looking for solutions on the other end. And every time ideas are brought forth, let's add more storage, let's streamline CEQA, let's do things to make it easier to get more water to the areas that need them. We never seem to be able to get those through. So, to me, I'd rather not go down the path of, putting more taxes, more fees, more restrictions on people, rather than not offering anything on the opposite side of how can we get, at least in the southern area, how can they retain the water that's already just running out to the ocean every time it rains? And a point was brought up. I have a 6-acre ranch in Valley Center, and the pipe broke one day, and we didn't know it for 2 days, and water ran, and that kind of thing could happen all the time on irrigation properties. So it's not that they're not on top of it, it's just a one-time issue like that, and you've got a $10,000 fine. So, I just wanted to get those comments out, and then I know you're going to keep working on it.
I don't think, certainly it's not my intent. I would love to see all the leaky pipes fixed up, because we know that that's about 10% of our state's water use. So there's an incentive there. It's, again, this is a tax that would be put in from excessive use. Clearly, your point that you made about, proof that the water pipe was broken and it was there, the responsible citizen, you don't want to have a punitive action there. I think the goal here is just for the overt excessive users that don't want to comply with some limitations of the drought. They just would rather just use the water, pay for it. They're not going to dance.
Mr. Wachowski, any further comments?
I would just entertain any other questions that any member would have on the proposed bill as amended, or clarifications that you need from me as you guys work as a local government committee to help us address this emergency that we have.
And Mr. Wachowski, I certainly, I think, speaking generally for the committee and for the staff, I want to thank you for your willingness to continue to work on this. I think, as can be heard from some of the opposition today, and even just some of the initial level questions from the committee, I think there's still some more work that needs to be done in terms of maybe definitions. For example, I guess, just to kind of talk about one area in particular, in terms of breaks, for example, that are sudden and unexpected, that's certainly different when you talk about there's 10% of kind of waste tends to be from or can be attributed to breaks. There's there's kind of, generally speaking, there's two kinds, right? There's the ongoing one that's not addressed, but there's also the sudden and unexpected one, which I think is a little bit what Ms. Waldron was getting at, which is it can break within a billing cycle. You don't know that it's happened. And 28 days later, you get your water bill and you realize, oh my God, this, it's tripled through no fault of your own. So I think some of those, and I use that as just kind of one example of maybe a definition that could be tightened up to address that concern. I think there's some other areas too, in terms of usage, in terms of kind of how some of these figures were arrived at. Having said that, as somebody who's worked with you on several bills, one in particular, I know you're particularly amenable to working on that.
Yeah, the committee should be mindful that this is an authorization bill for these special districts, all these water districts that are either here or not here. Any measure that this would have to go for a vote of the public. So that measure would have to articulate what the scheme was, what the tax scheme was, or suggestions, so that the voters could vote on it. So while I believe that it's we set up guidelines here and we set up authority. It's like a sales tax measure, which 20 of our counties have used. They do a a plan. They develop their own plan of how the money's going to be spent and what it is. We provide them with that authorization. So this is a multi-step fix where we give the authorization here at the state, the local agency decides that they're going to put it out to the voters, and then the voters are going to say, we want other people to act like us and conserve water, and then they vote on it. And then the pipe breaks. So then we deal with the remedy there. I look forward to, it's a sort of busy time now, but I have been with Ledge Council to make sure that the amendments that I've articulated today are actually put in print. I will go back with the advocates of here, from the academic community that are the impetus of this, to saying this is a way that we change behaviors in the people in California that somehow don't get it and are not doing their fair share to tackle this emergency we have. I appreciate your indulgence, each and every one of you. I shall return.
Thank you. Thank you for that call of duty right there too, in particular. But thanks for your presentation today. Certainly, I will continue to work with you. Our entire committee is willing to do that as a staff. So, thank you, Senator Wieckowski. Next is item number 7, SB 533. Senator Pan.
Thank you.
And before you begin, Senator Pan, without objection, the camera will be allowed to take a brief shot of this item. Okay. You may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, today I bring you SB 533, a bill that will impose a narrowly tailored prohibition on the use of the Bradley-Burns tax rebates. This bill eliminates exceptions in the current law that some businesses and local governments have been taking advantage of. And I would like to accept the committee's suggested amendment to clarify that this mutual tax sharing agreement does not include a retailer. It's not our intention to create more loopholes. This clarification will ensure that this exemption will not provide another loophole and allow the types of practices we were trying to prevent. It is becoming an increasingly common practice for companies to pressure local agencies to provide a sales tax revenue rebate on the promise to book all sales from multiple sites with that local agency. There's a growing cottage industry of consultants who appear to specialize in helping companies pursue this strategy. This practice is fundamentally unfair. When the sales tax revenue from a commercial activity in one jurisdiction is booked in another, the local agency that is losing the sales tax revenue still must continue to provide police and fire protection services to the company, since it's maintaining a physical presence within the territory of the local agency. And the local agency also must maintain streets and other services. Making this practice even more nefarious, this is often done without the knowledge of the citizens, businesses, and employees within the jurisdiction of the local agency agreeing to the deal, and without any notice to the local agency that is losing sales tax revenue as a result of the agreement. This has happened in my district in the city of West Sacramento, and I have Mayor Christopher Cabalden here with me to speak about his experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm Christopher Cabalden. I'm the mayor of West Sacramento. So imagine you get your property tax check from your county, and it's $600,000 less than you had anticipated, and nobody knows why. You can't figure it out. The county doesn't know why either. Upon a forensic investigation, you realize that one of your large sales tax generators is now booking zero sales tax. You're wondering, well, how could that be? I just drove by and we had a fire truck in front of them, and they're still on our water use report. I didn't get a warn notice saying that they were laying anyone off. They're still all their economic activity is still happening in the city. And then you realize that they have instead opened up a facility somewhere else and booked their entire sales taxes to that other location. West Sacramento is a pretty healthy, vibrant, economic development-oriented city with lots of sales taxes. We're not naive as to these issues or to the nature of economic competition. But this one's just beyond the pale. That's the equivalent of about 4 police officers in our city that we suddenly had zero funding for. So this is a narrow loophole that's existed in an otherwise fiscalized system that has allowed for this to occur. In our case, this would prevent that from happening in the future, so that at least we would be aware that something was occurring. The residents of that community, who in most cases, my residents would say, no, we're not going to steal everything away from Watsonville in order to make our finances work. This provides the transparency that's necessary while simultaneously allowing the sorts of normal economic development activity to occur. I should say that our next contact was, well, if you will cut us a check back of your sales taxes that's a little bit higher than the one that stole it from you, we'll give it to you, but you also have to send it back to Florida, which is where these revenues all went back to. In the end, it's an unhealthy instant race to the bottom that hurts California's cities and communities, but also California's company and our economy.
Other witnesses in support.
Nicolo DeLuca here on behalf of the cities of Emeryville and Oakland. We want to thank the Senator for his recent amendments, and we proudly support this bill. Thank you.
Moira Top on behalf of the City of San Diego. We are in support of the measure. We've seen the same, we've experienced the same issues that West Sacramento has experienced. Obviously, San Diego is a very large city, so the impact is significant in our city, and we ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Chairman and members, Dan Carrick on behalf of the League of California Cities. Two things. Number one, we are obviously an organization that tries to defend the flexibility of local government to do economic development. And this bill, the way it's drafted, still does leave the ability of an individual city to conduct economic development activities as it chooses. However, the practice of moving money around between jurisdictions, especially without their knowledge or consent, is something where we've drawn the line. We did help support and sponsor Senator Hancock's bill a number of years ago that laid out a number of limitations and tried to kind of plug some of these holes. This bill basically goes back and kind of tightens things up more so that we don't have more of this going forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Paul Gonzalez, representing the city of Cerritos in support of the bill. I'd like to thank the author as well and urge your aye vote.
Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Tim Lynch on behalf of the County of San Bernardino, and we're afraid the bill goes a little bit too far. We're satisfied with the results of the Hancock bill. San Bernardino is often in competition with other states where the size and scope and proximity to other states that are very competitive, and we're worried the bill goes a little too far and will have an impact on our ability to offer economic incentives and keep the Inland Empire vibrant. Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Linder.
Real quick question for you, sir. Is this bill correct? Is it a loophole, or was it the original intent of the law to allow for this type of occurrence to happen?
I probably can't speak to the original intent. I would view it as a loophole because what's happening is that this is not two cities saying who can offer the best deal for this company. This is basically two cities which both have, physical presence of a company, and the company's saying, you know what, I can shift all my sales tax to one or the other. So if you're the city that loses out, you're still having to provide services. It's not that that company has then decided to pull up their stakes. You are still on the hook providing the road maintenance and the fire and the police. They'll be calling your police department even though you're not getting any sales tax revenue, and I think that's frankly unfair.
This is a whack-a-mole loophole. So you have tried many times to solve this problem, and creative consultants and a few cities have found ways around it. But it was not intended in the Hancock bill that this sort of practice would occur. There was language in that bill that was intended to make sure that you could continue where there was a new operation where you're moving most of everything. But that loophole, what was left there as a path, got expanded into a gigantic loophole.
Mr. Cooley.
I was just going to move the bill.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion from Mr. Cooley, a second from Mr. Gordon. Mr. Alejo.
I was just intrigued that you raised Watson, but I was wondering how many cities is this happening, and how widespread is what happened in West Sacramento or San Diego? How widespread is this among other cities? Any idea?
I don't know. I know it's much more than this case because we're constantly approached on the other end of the equation. Is wouldn't you like to take someone else's sales tax revenue for free if we move into your city? So I know it's a commonplace proposal that's being considered. I don't know that because these are largely secret agreements. I don't know the level of their incidence statewide.
Although I think with consultants now trying to sell this idea. I think it could become an expanding problem, and I would certainly hate. I'm sure Mayor Cabal would never have an agreement to take money away from Watsonville.
Never.
With the stipulation that Watsonville is safe, we do have a motion and a second. Before you close, Senator Pan, I want to thank you for bringing this. This is something that's important to the city of San Diego. I do think it's a fair characterization to essentially call it a loophole, because I think it is. And this is something that will provide more certainty in budgeting. You're exactly right that it still is the city's on the hook for these requirements without having the funding source to do it. And kind of I think what's particularly troubling is, in essence, the secrecy or the uncertainty that doesn't allow for good budgeting at the local level. So pleased to support your bill. Thank you for bringing it. This will be helpful, I think, statewide, but certainly to the city of San Diego. So thank you for bringing it. With that, you may close.
Respectfully ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Okay. And so the motion, to be clear, is do pass as amended per comment number 6 in the analysis, which will clarify language in the bill related to mutual tax revenue sharing agreements. We have a motion and a second. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
The motion is do pass as amended and re-refer to the Committee on Revenue and Taxation. Mainshine.
Aye.
Mainshine, aye. Gonzalez. Aye. Gonzalez, aye. Alejo. Aye. Alejo, aye. Chu. Aye. Chu, aye. Cooley.
Aye.
Cooley, aye. Gordon. Aye. Gordon, aye. Holden. Aye. Holden, aye. Linder. Aye. Linder, aye. Waldron. Aye. Waldron, aye.
Your measure is out 9-0. Congratulations. Next.